So what is arginine? It's a conditionally essential amino acid. Conditionally essential. What does that mean? That means your body makes it, but under certain conditions, you can't make enough. And so our body can actually synthesize arginine from, if you eat adequate glutamine and ornithine. These are also amino acids predominantly found in animal proteins, but you can certainly find them in things like legumes and seeds and nuts, among other food sources. But conditional essentiality, basically, you need more than what your body can synthesize in those times. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. I'm going to kind of blow this diagram up for you because I want you to show you a little bit of the chemistry here. So you see up here, this tube represents the small intestine, and arginine is actually absorbed through dietary foods, up to, it's about 3 grams a day. You can get somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70% absorption. So it's very well absorbed, provided, of course, your intestines aren't damaged. Where we get in trouble with absorption would be conditions like inflammatory bowel disease. Those of you with gluten issues and celiac disease might have issues with absorption of arginine from the food that you're eating. Now, once you absorb it and it comes into your bloodstream, you can take L-Arginine and you can convert it down here into a substance called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is something we'll be talking about, but in order for you to be able to do that, just again, a little biochemistry, that requires vitamins. But unfortunately, the biochemistry textbooks don't tell you what these abbreviations typically mean. So NAD, nicotine adenine dinucleotide, this is a version of vitamin B3. So this one in the middle, in order to convert arginine into nitric oxide, requires vitamin B3, but it also requires BH4, which is a form of folate, or vitamin B9, and it requires FAD, or FMN, which is a form of vitamin B2, or riboflavin. So you need B vitamins to turn arginine into nitric oxide, but you also need calcium. As you can see here, Ca2 is calcium. So for those of you who are nutrition nerds and just like to know more about the vitamins and the minerals, arginine, very important in its role there. Now, let's talk about the functions of arginine. There's several of them. You see here cardiovascular health. It supports the production, well, we were just talking about, nitric oxide. This substance won a Nobel Prize in medicine. It was discovered to be critical in dilating blood vessels. So many of you that have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, as an example, constricted blood vessels can cause high blood pressure, and without adequate arginine, we can end up with blood vessels that don't properly dilate and constrict, and so it can start to affect blood pressure, hence cardiovascular health. We also know it's important for blood flow and for heart failure and other things, and we'll get into some of that in just a minute. We know that arginine enhances immune system defense by helping T cells mature properly. We know that it plays a role in the production of insulin, especially as it relates to zinc preservation. So it has a preserving effect on your zinc status. And zinc is really important. It actually is a centerpiece that holds insulin together. And then we know it plays a role in the regulation of glucose metabolism. We also know that it can stimulate growth hormone, among other hormones, growth hormone being one of them, but insulin is another one. As we just mentioned, it's a hormone, but also, ladies, prolactin is another hormone that we've seen arginine help to stimulate. And then we know it's important for muscle growth. It boosts blood flow to muscle tissue. There are a number of studies that show that taking anywhere from 3 to 6 grams of arginine an hour or so before workouts can actually improve your recovery, but also enhance your performance within the activity. And then we also know that arginine stimulates wound repair. And I'll show you some of the research on this. What's really interesting about arginine, what's really fun about arginine, in my opinion, is there are a lot of human studies on it, human trials. Unlike many other amino acids, you got a lot of human trials on arginine, and we'll do a review of some of those. You can see here This is from, basically, this is from a review paper on arginine. In conclusion, L-Arginine has strong anti-cancer, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, cardiovascular, anti-gingival, and anti-diabetic properties. So, in essence, helps fight cancer, helps maintain integrity of DNA, helps reduce inflammation, protect your brain, protect your heart and your nerve or your cardiovascular function, protect your gums, regulate your blood sugar. Numerous researchers have shown that it is a nutraceutical that protects against a wide range of heart, liver, neurological, and reproductive system disorders. And you always get this at the end, right? However, more research is needed. And that's the case with science. Science is really never settled. I know they were trying to tell us that a few years ago, but they're wrong. Always ongoing research because we never know everything. Now, this is just an image, a diagram on nitric oxide and how it plays a role, or actually arginine and how it plays a role in immune cell function. So you can see here you have different types of macrophage cells. Macrophage, you see at the top macrophage M2, and then down here macrophage M1. What are macrophages? These are cells that behave like Pac-Man. Remember that video game when you were a kid? Maybe some of you do. And so what happens when you have inflammation? Excuse my drawing here, but when you have, let's say this is a blood vessel, and let's say you got some damage to the lining and you have all this debris from that damage, this little Pac-Man will gobble up all of that debris. That's what a macrophage does, is it goes in there and it cleans out damaged tissue. If you remember, we talked recently about SPMs and why they were so important. SPMs actually help to activate these macrophage cells and turn them on, thus resolving or helping to resolve inflammation. But as it relates to arginine, you can see here, arginine through different actions, one through this enzyme called arginase, where you make ornithine and urea, stimulates certain types of macrophages. And then you have another pathway where nitric oxide is produced, and that helps to stimulate these Pac-Man-like cells that help to regulate inflammation. So this is one of the reasons why when we say arginine enhances immune function, that's one of the reasons why. This was out of the European Journal of Medicinal Chemistry. You can see here we've got animal studies and we've got human studies with arginine, and a lot of the mechanisms of action are determined through animal research. So we know, for example, that arginine has antioxidant actions. We know that it has anti-inflammatory action and anti-aging and hepatorenal action, meaning liver and kidney function actions. We know that it can increase neuronal function. We know that it can improve in men erectile dysfunction. We know that it can enhance spermatogenesis. What is this? This is the production of sperm. So, you know, a lot of times I see this a lot in couples. They come to me for nutrition, and maybe they're fighting with infertility issues, and the woman or the wife has been investigated aggressively, meaning they've done every test under the umbrella of testing that can be done in terms of fertility, but the male or the guy hasn't been tested at all. And a lot of times, in my experience, it's the man, not the woman. And so arginine is one of those that we know has an effect on sperm production. And so a man could be underproducing sperm, and that could be a reason for infertility. We know that arginine can improve insulin sensitivity and glucose absorption. We know it enhances immune function and prevents heart disease, but it also promotes fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are specialized cells designed for, these are healing and repair cells that make collagen. And so you can't do that very well without arginine. We know it also has anti-apoptotic action, so it prevents cells from being destroyed or damaged. So pretty important amino acid. Now here is a nice summary study on the potential of arginine in the prevention and treatment of carbohydrate and fat metabolism disorders or lipid metabolism disorders. And you can see each one of these little lines here. So like this first one, function is to produce nitric oxide. We'll talk about nitric oxide a little bit more. We also know that arginine improves metabolism of fat or lipids and enhances or improves lipid parameters. So for example, we know it can increase HDL type C, which is what so many refer to as good cholesterol. It can reduce triglycerides for many. We also know it can reduce inflammatory parameters. We know there are studies in humans where this enhances or improves weight loss, body weight, and then also reduces the potential for something called atherogenesis, which is atherosclerosis. Basically, if you have a blood vessel here, if you have inflammatory damage to the lining of a blood vessel, your circulating cholesterol that kind of just floats through your blood, specifically there are certain types of cholesterol like lipoprotein A, will cluster to that area of inflammation, and they'll create a fatty deposition, and that's what they call atherogenesis, this process of creating a plaque, right? And so what happens is this plaque gets big enough over time, it creates a blood flow turbulence because the vessel itself physically is more narrowed. It's going to increase your blood pressure, but if this plaque breaks off, it can also lodge into smaller blood vessels downstream and create a stroke or heart attack or other type of blood blockage. So we know that arginine helps to reduce that process. We know it can improve your sensitivity to insulin. We know it can enhance or improve glucose intolerance. We know it aids in insulin secretion, so it actually can stimulate and help the pancreas making insulin, as well as something called insulin-like growth factor. And then it helps to increase the survival of beta cells. So those of you who maybe don't know what beta cells are, they're specialized cells in the pancreas that make insulin. These are the cells that have irreversible damage in type 1 diabetics. If you know anyone that is insulin-dependent type 1 diabetic, it's because their beta cells were destroyed through an autoimmune process. And so arginine preserves these beta cells so that you can continue to make insulin. And then we also know that it aids in the metabolism of carbohydrates as well.